Dr. Belhiyah is a prolific researcher with numerous publications in leading international journals, including Classroom Discourse, the Modern Language Journal, Journal of Pragmatics and Applied Linguistics. His research interests span a broad range of topics, including language policy, multilingualism, language and identity, and the sociocultural impact of English as a global language. His work often focuses on the MENA region, particularly Morocco, where he explores the role of English in education and its implications for cultural and linguistic identity. There is much to say about Dr. Hassan Belhiyah, but I believe that Dr. Hassan Belhiyah's distinguished career as an academic researcher and administrator reflects his strong commitment to education, language, and literacy studies. His contributions to the field of linguistics, particularly in the context of the MENA region, have had a lasting impact on both scholars and students. As Vice Dean and full professor, Dr. Belhiyah continues to inspire and lead with a vision for academic excellence, cross-cultural understanding, and the empowerment of future generations through education. We are very happy to have you, Dr. Belhiyah, today, and I believe that our students and all the ones who have joined us in this meeting today will learn much about you. But before giving you the floor, just for the ones attending, the audience, could you please hold your horses for whatever questions you have, as at the end of this session, we'll have a Q&R session in which you will be welcome to provide or to ask whatever questions you have. Dr. Belhiyah, the floor is yours. You have about 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Ahlam, for this wonderful introduction. And also, I'd like to thank my friend and colleague, Professor Mohammed Gamgami, for inviting me to talk about this topic, EMI in Global South Dialogical Perspective. In fact, I got interested in this topic back in 2009 when I was relocated to Abu Dhabi. And I was supposed to teach in a master's program in education through the English medium. So at that time, all my students were from Arabic-speaking countries, mainly from Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. And of course, I couldn't help but notice that actually they had difficulties with understanding through the English medium. So at that time, I didn't even know that the term EMI existed. So that's how I started my journey into this fascinating topic. And I basically, part of it was started as action research, trying actually to remedy the situation and help these students actually benefit from what the university was offering them, while also not being, let's say, marginalized by the EMI policy. Okay, so today, I prepared 8 points for my presentation. So this is the outline. Okay, so first of all, I'll give a brief introduction to EMI. Okay, what does it mean and where it came from? And then I'll talk about the concept of Global South, because that's part of our title and also part of the series for this seminar. And then I'll give a brief background about English language teaching in Morocco. And then after that, I'll move on to the rise of EMI in Morocco. And after that, I'll present some of my own research and also research of my colleagues in Morocco who looked into students and teacher attitudes towards EMI. I'm also going to talk about the benefits of EMI for Moroccan students, again, based on my own research and research of my fellow researchers. And before we move on to challenges of implementing EMI in Morocco, and I'll conclude with recommendations for strengthening EMI in Morocco. Okay, so Mohammed, can we move on to the next slide? Okay, great. So what does EMI mean? Okay, so English as a medium of instruction, it's not a theory, it's a methodology. And what it means is that actually, it means using English to teach academic content to non-native speakers of English. Okay, so this is different from ESL, for example, in which you teach English to non-native speakers of English, but EMI actually is that you deliver content, okay, subject courses like mathematics, philosophy, sciences, and so on. Okay, and of course, we're talking here about non-native English-speaking countries, okay, mostly North Africa, South Asia, Latin America, and so on. Of course, in the global context, because English has become a global language and English has moved from being considered a second language to a foreign language, okay, and now it's used as a medium of instruction. And this is gaining prominence in many countries like Japan, China, and Germany, where EMI courses are actually on the increase. And according to a UNESCO report, there are today more than 2,000 universities that offer EMI courses or degrees. And how is this relevant to the global South? Okay, so Morocco, being a country that belongs to the global South, I mean, these countries are also starting to implement this policy or this methodology. As you know, in Morocco, historically, French and Arabic are the languages of media of instruction. During the colonial era, French used to be used to teach the scientific subject matter. And then came Arabization, which actually tried to use Arabic as a medium of instruction. But of course, today, in higher education, we still use French as a medium of instruction to teach sciences and engineering. And of course, nowadays, we see that there is a transition in some universities to teach the subject matter in English. This is happening and mostly in schools of engineering and sciences. There are, of course, some universities like Al Akhawain University that was founded in 1993 and it was inaugurated in 1995 that actually offers a complete English curriculum. That means all courses are, all degrees are taught through the English medium. Okay, can we go back, see? Okay, great. I'll let you know when I can move on, Si Mohammed. Okay, no worries. Okay, great. Thank you. And of course, there is this idea that in Morocco, we don't need French anymore. Okay, there are even some people who will tell you that actually standard Arabic is useless because it's not a language we use in day-to-day communication, and it's not the language of business today. And actually, the most dominant language of business, technology, and research is English. So we have this course actually being prevalent in our communities. Okay, next, Sidi Mohammed. Okay, so now I want to give you some background about the concept of the global South. Okay, so historically, the global South as a term, it was coined in the 1970s. And before that, we had the term the third world. Okay, so basically, it's a synonym of that. But of course, the global South is not really a reference to geography, but actually it's a geopolitical terms. In other words, it makes a difference between the global North countries, which are wealthier and more technologically advanced. Okay, they also had a stronger industry, as opposed to the global South, okay, which refers to countries which are less wealthy and also who are more impoverished. Okay, so the global North is usually associated to countries in Europe and also North America. And the global South, we're talking mostly about African countries, Asian countries, and Latin American countries. So again, here, I want to underscore the idea that it's a geopolitical term rather than a geographical term, because as I said before, if we take a country like Japan, it's an Asian country, but because it's technologically advanced, okay, it's considered part of the global North rather than the global South. Okay. Of course, this also has educational implications because nowadays countries, including Morocco, which are located in the global South, okay, are also seeing the importance of adopting English in general and also EMI, because there is this idea that actually if you want to catch up with the global North countries, the only way to do that is through, adopting English, which is considered the language of science, technology, and technological advancement. Okay, next slide, Sidi Mohammed. Okay, so now after this introduction, I'd like to talk a little bit about English language teaching in Morocco, starting with K-12. Okay, so in Morocco, as you know, the two official languages are Amazigh and Standard Arabic. Of course, in day-to-day communication, we're using Amazigh and Moroccan Darija. Of course, we use other foreign languages like Spanish, mostly Spanish and French. French is considered the first foreign language, while English is considered the second foreign language. There is a plan right now being piloted by the ministry, actually, where English is to be taught starting grade 1 in high school. Again, recognizing the importance of English as a global language. Okay, there was also an English option of the international backward in 2014, but that has been abandoned basically because the teachers who were supposed to teach in English did not receive sufficient training and didn't feel actually comfortable transitioning from French into English. We don't have EMI schools, let's say government schools in Morocco, but there are private schools that offer an EMI curriculum, mainly American schools. So there are 4 American schools in Morocco. There is one in Casablanca, one in Rabat, one in Tangier, and one in Marrakesh. Okay, next slide, Sidi Mohammed. Okay, so yeah, can you show the 8 titles? Okay. Yeah, you can just hit next until you get to number 8. Okay, so I want to talk now about English language teaching agents in Morocco, which are behind the promotion of English in, let's say, all walks of life. So we're going to start with the Ministry of Education, which, again, although French is still actually has the upper hand in Morocco, but actually the Ministry of Education is contributing significant efforts towards the promotion of English, okay, for example, through the publication of English books and also providing support to English organizations or associations like the MATE, okay, Moroccan Association of Teachers of English. Okay, so the MATE has been up and running since the 1970s, and it's very, very active in the field of English language training. And they have also managed to organize a national conference every year religiously. And MATE was originally run by university professors, and now it caters more to the needs of high school teachers. There's also the British Council, which offers support again to English associations in Morocco, but also it has its own English language teaching programs. Fourth is the Regional English Language Office, which is affiliated with the US State of Department. Again, it's another institution, foreign institution that offers support for English teachers and also contributes towards the promotion of English in Morocco. Then we have the American Language Centers, which the first American Language Center was created in Morocco in the 1950s in Rabat, and now there are 12 American Language Centers in Morocco, in most big cities like Casablanca, Rabat, Agadir, Fez, Meknes. I think even in Oujda, there is an American Language Center now. There is also Amidist that actually offer courses actually to foreigners, like Arabic courses, but also they offer English courses. They help students who want to go study abroad, especially in the US. They offer test preparation in TOEFL exam, IELTS exam, and so on. Besides that, there are English language schools. So these schools are actually created by Moroccans who see the need for English. So it's basically a booming market or a booming business. And actually, there are more English language schools in Morocco than Arabic schools or French schools. Again, this underscores the huge demand for English in Morocco. And finally, we should not ignore parents who are actually active language policy agents. Okay, a lot of the parents, they actually encourage their kids to learn foreign languages, especially English. And of course, they see the need for English not now, but also in the future. Okay, next slide, Sidi Mohammed. Okay, now the next point, the rise of EMI in Morocco. As I've mentioned before, in Moroccan schools, of course, instruction in primary education is done through the Arabic medium, using standard Arabic. Of course, in secondary education, our kids study through French and Arabic medium. Okay, so there are right now no primary schools in Morocco that offer EMI. I'm talking about government schools, but I've mentioned before, there are quite few private schools like American schools that offer tuition through the English medium. In secondary education, as I've mentioned before, there were some attempts, for example, like to offer the baccalaureate for like in mathematics, like option mathematics in English, but again, that didn't really succeed because the teachers, they were not trained in EMI methodology, and also they had low proficiency in English. So it's very difficult overnight to actually, ask these people to start teaching through English medium. However, in higher education, there is, I would say, every year, there is more progress in terms of EMI. The first university that started offering EMI in Morocco is Al Akhawain University, and it was inaugurated in 1995. So it's almost now, 30 years that they offer instruction through English medium. And all their programs are taught through the English medium, whether it's in the School of Science and Engineering or humanities, or business school. And actually, some of their programs, like the Masters in North African Studies, right now, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, actually told me all their students are actually foreign students, because again, it's North Africa, so mostly it's foreigners that actually come here to learn more about North African issues. So that's very interesting that actually, by offering EMI, it's only benefiting Morocco, but also it's possible to attract students from overseas. There is also, for example, in Rabat, International University in Rabat. Of course, this university is managed or run by the Moroccan and French government, and it started initially offering all its programs in French. Okay, however, today in the School of Engineering, they're actually teaching through English medium. In the business school as well, you can either start from the first year to study through the English medium, or you can do a bilingual program through English and French. But actually, in the third year, because it's a 3-year program, all courses are offered through the English medium. So again, there is more and more universities that offer instruction through the English medium in Morocco. Also, in some public universities, there aren't any official programs, but actually sometimes it depends on professors. So professors, for example, who feel comfortable teaching in English or who were educated in an English-speaking countries actually have started offering instruction through the English medium. Okay, next slide, Sir Mohammed. Okay, so now I want to talk about the findings, some of the findings based on my own research. Okay, some of it I did by myself. I also worked with some of my graduate students like Anisa Al-Hafari. Okay, and also I published an article early this year with Professor Hamza Rapoul, and also I'm gonna also cite findings from a researcher who graduated last year, Professor Ben Hammou. He is now a professor in STAT. Okay, so in all my work and also the work done of my colleagues, okay, generally when students' attitudes were elicited, they were generally positive. So, for example, if you, you were asked whether they would prefer to be taught in English or Arabic or French, okay, so they were overwhelmingly in favor of English instruction. Okay? So as I've mentioned in my introduction, English is seen as a language of science and technology, as opposed, for example, to French, which they would say it's only limited to some African countries, but outside of Morocco, it has limited use. And also in Morocco, there is an assumption that if you are in the job market, you should already know French and Arabic. Okay, so these are givens. However, you need English, so English will give you a boost in the job market. It will give you an edge over the other candidates. However, there are also concerns about, let's say, the dominance of English. So, for example, there was issues of identity when the study that I did recently with my student Anisa and Professor Hamza Rapoul. It was done in an American high school in Rabat. Okay, so we conducted interviews with students, high school students. Of course, in this school, all instruction is done through the English medium. So there is this idea that actually English is dominating the school sphere. It's the only language that is being heard. And what happens is that actually, even when these kids go at home, actually, they started using English with their parents. So, of course, there is some concerns about, let's say, Moroccan identity, and also, especially linguistic identity. I mean, they were worried about actually maybe losing Arabic, and also, let's say, having a diminished proficiency in French. Okay, next slide, Mohammed. Okay, now some of the benefits that were also identified in these studies. So there are three major benefits that actually, when you study through the English medium, of course, you learn the content of the subject matter, but also you have access to global knowledge, because really the advantages of EMI is that actually you are learning the content, but also you have the added benefit of learning or mastering another language. But just imagine, you know, if you study a subject through English since high school, and you do this through, through university studies. So we're talking about 6 or 7 years of study. And actually, if you study all the content in English, you could easily reach C1 level. And C1 level basically will allow you to read any material that's, let's say, published in English, whether it's on the internet or in books. So by reading these materials, you have access to global knowledge. On the other hand, if you limit yourself to Arabic, for example, you won't learn much about what's happening, you know, outside the Moroccan territory. So actually, you know, students explained that actually English is very important because it allows access to global knowledge. This was also clear in the case of graduate students who are required nowadays to publish in English. So in many universities in which I conducted my study, there is a requirement actually to publish articles by graduate students in Scopus indexed journals. And as you know, more than 90% of these journals are actually published in English. So if you write an article in French, I mean, what are the chances of your article, being published in one of these journals? So a lot of these students, what they actually do is that they would write the article in French and then try to find someone to translate it to in English. But some of them actually, when you student, they started learning English. So basically, it's an important requirement. And also professors would encourage them actually to learn English because their professors also need to publish in English to gain high visibility. Another important benefit is in terms of employability. So a lot of these students actually, a lot of them, they're thinking about moving overseas once they graduate. And basically, if you only speak French, it really limits your options. But if you speak English, okay, I mean, you don't necessarily need to work in the UK or the US, but actually many Asian countries like Japan and China, okay, they rely heavily on English. So basically, learning English or mastering English, it gives you actually more options and more, you become more competitive in the job market. And as I said before, even in Morocco, I mean, Arabic and French are given. So, I mean, there is an assumption that actually you should already know these languages. So when you speak the third language, especially English, it gives you an edge over other candidates. And finally, cultural awareness. I'm conducting a study right now on globalization and identity in North Africa and the Middle East. And one of the main research courses I'm trying to investigate is whether actually globalization, especially through the global spread of English, to what extent it's impacting students' religious identity. In other words, is it the case that by being exposed to English or by using English as a medium of instruction, is this something that will affect your religiosity? And actually, one interesting fact is that actually a lot of students didn't see any worry of this because they said that actually that learning English will allow them to make other people in other countries aware about Islam and Islamic values. So in other words, English in this case, it's not in the direction of receiving, let's say, culture from the West, but actually you can export your culture to the West through the English medium, okay? And basically, by learning English, you study about other cultures, you become more culturally sensitive and more culturally tolerant. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so now we get to the challenges of implementing EMI in Morocco. So in some of my research, I actually conducted interviews with students, teachers, and administrators. So of course, students, because they're the entities directly impacted by the EMI policy. And the teachers, because I wanted to see to what extent, let's say, their students are ready to study through the English medium, and also to what extent they feel prepared to teach through the English medium. And of course, administrators, because they're the one that deal with these issues of whether the school possesses enough resources to deliver instruction through the English medium. Okay, so of course, one of the main challenges is teacher training in the EMI methodology. So I mentioned, for example, the situation of the International University in Rabat. So initially, they started offering instruction through the French medium, and in recent years, they're starting to transition into the English medium. However, because they have full-time professors and some of them are tenured, I mean, even if you ask them to teach in English, I mean, do these teachers actually speak English fluently? So that's the question. And even if they try, I think sometimes it can be a source of embarrassment. I mean, you're just turn them into laughing stocks in front of students, because some students actually they speak better English, or they have native-like competency. Just imagine, you're speaking a language basically using broken English, and you're talking in front of students who are actually very fluent in. Yes, so what happens is actually a lot of these teachers end up delivering instructions through the French medium. They just don't feel comfortable or confident teaching through the English medium. And what some of these schools do is that actually, in this case, they allow the teacher to deliver instruction through English medium, but they will tell them if students want to talk in English, that's fine. Because actually, there are students who don't speak French because they've been to an English medium school when they were in K-12. And also, because these schools also try to internationalize, a lot of the students are foreigners who don't actually understand English. So they have this, let's say, flexible bilingual policy in which they use English and French. Okay, so in this case, what is needed is actually, if you want to deliver instructions to the English medium, it's very important to provide support to teachers, to maybe offer English classes, and also training in EMI methodology. Also, there are some gaps in resources. So when you, in these schools that offered instruction for the French medium before, all the textbooks were in French, okay? But now you have to switch into English. But the problem is, where can you find the English textbooks that take into account the Moroccan context? For example, in most business schools, they have a course entitled Moroccan taxation, okay? And of course, if you want to study Moroccan taxation, all the texts are written in French, okay? Some of them are written in Arabic. So you need actually, someone who can, or her masters, both Arabic and French, and also, in addition to that, her masters English. So when I was doing my research at Hawaiian University, this course actually is taught by a Moroccan, like a tax expert, but actually he does not speak English, so he teaches the course in French. And people who are working there as full-timers, they can't teach the course because they're not experts in Moroccan taxation. So again, in other words, there is no textbook actually on Moroccan taxation that actually they can use in their course. And also, when we talk about gaps in resources, for example, there are also students who don't master English. So at Hawaiian University, for example, when you first enter university, you take a placement test, and if your English proficiency is low, you actually start learning English in the language center. So you can actually study in the language up to 1 year. And then once you reach at least level B2, then you can start taking content courses in English. But other universities, they don't have such programs. They don't have language centers that actually train students or prepare students in ESL before they start studying through the English medium. And another important challenge is inconsistency in policies. So what happens with let's say EMI in Morocco, and I'm sure you've seen this before. For example, 2 years ago, the ministry issued a communique actually claiming that starting the following year, in high school, science subject will be taught through the English medium. And then, of course, I mean, it's not possible because do you actually have teachers that are qualified to teach through the English medium? Okay, so we have these haphazard policies that actually are not well thought through, and they're not really consistent. And of course, even if you, let's say, replace French with English, I don't think this will, let's say, solve all the educational problems that we have in Morocco. I mean, we have issues of crowded classrooms, demotivated teachers, lack of resources, and so on. Okay, so I think these problems need to be fixed first, and then English can be used maybe for other purposes or to improve these situations. So, replacing English with French is not really the real issue. The real issue is that actually with motivating teachers, providing resources, and also creating opportunities for kids to thrive. Okay, so finally, I have some recommendations for strengthening EMI in Morocco. So first of all, we need teacher training programs. Most teachers in Morocco, I would say they have a good to a strong mastery of Arabic and French. So I think they can teach in both languages, but very, very few of them master English. So as you know, of course, mastering a language is not a simple feat for adults. I mean, kids can learn pretty much any language fast, but once you become an adult, it becomes really, really difficult. I mean, you all learn about the critical period hypothesis, which is actually beyond the age of puberty. Our brain becomes fossilized and it becomes all the harder or difficult to learn a foreign language. So I think with these professors or teachers, even if they try, it's not really an easy task. And I think unless we have effective programs that can motivate them to learn the language, this is not likely to happen. We also need curriculum development. So when we talk about curriculum development, it's not enough just to borrow or use textbooks published, for example, in the US or in the UK, because they don't deal with the Moroccan context. So we need our own curricula, and basically we need a division either in universities or in the ministry that actually, let's say, takes the job of preparing materials that fit the Moroccan context. Also, when I talk about curriculum development, of course, we need language centers that offer training in general English, in English for specific purposes, and also in academic writing. In general English for students and teachers who want to improve their English skills, either to become better students and also for teachers to become better teachers. We also need ASP because, again, if you want to teach, let's say, in the medical school, you need to know the medical terminology. If you want to teach in, for example, the School of Law, you also need some background or training in legal English. So this is very, very important. And also, we need courses in academic writing because, again, in most universities now, professors are required to publish in English. And again, unfortunately, most graduate students, they haven't had any courses in academic writing. So we need to offer courses in academic writing or academic writing skills. And finally, we need a balanced language policy because it's always been the case in Morocco that we have to use one language only. So after independence, we had the Arabization policy. Everything has to be taught in Arabic. We need to get rid of Amazigh language. We need to get rid of French. And then, of course, people who belong to the Francophone camp, they're trying to promote French as the language of, let's say, prestige and diplomacy, and of course, all at the expense of local languages. And of course, it will be the case again if we, adopt English, let's say, as the language of science and technology. But of course, this will create some sort of bilingual ideology that actually promotes English at the expense of local languages. So what we need is a policy that actually promotes diversity and inclusivity, where actually kids can thrive learning or using the local languages, mainly Arabic and Amazigh, and also learning important foreign languages like English and French. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Hayah, for this very insightful presentation. You should see, I mean, the comments, what students or what attendees are writing in the chat room. I mean, they are expressing their appreciation to an extreme extent the presentation delivered, especially that it has a lot to do with what they are working on. So Dr. Bilhiyah, thank you very much for putting EMI in the Moroccan context, providing us with the historical background, the implementation in different Moroccan schools and universities, along with a comparison with the use of French, in addition to certain challenges and recommendations. I believe students are full. They have lots of questions. So without any delay, let's say that we have 15 minutes for a Q&R session in which we'll be taking questions. So if you have any questions, you are welcome to ask Dr. Hassan Bilhiyah. You can either write them in the chat room and I will read them myself, or you can simply just ask Dr. Bilhiyah directly. Yes? Okay, so we have a question by Sami. Sami is saying, thank you, Professor Bilhiyah, for the insightful presentation. You have mentioned earlier that teachers fall back to translanguaging to hide their lack of English proficiency. What role should translanguaging play in EMI classrooms if there is even any room for that?
Okay, thank you, Ahlam, and thank you, Sami, for this question. I think when we say translanguaging, it's a pedagogy. So actually, if you decide as a teacher to use this pedagogy, it means it's something that you are aware of. But on the other hand, if you say to fall back on, that means actually that's not the pedagogy anymore. That actually it's like they are resorting to Arabic or French because they can't deliver instruction in English. Okay, so translanguage as a pedagogy, it's important because again, it's something that you are aware of. And for example, as I've mentioned before, especially it's actually happened to me from my experience when I was in Abu Dhabi. And this is actually what motivated me to do research on this, because actually, you know, one anecdote is that one day after doing a brief introduction to the topic of academic writing, I gave an activity to students to do. So I was going around, you know, checking what the groups were doing. And so that some of them, they were translating my slides into Arabic. Okay, so little did I know that actually they did not understand what I was saying in English. Okay, so of course I had a conversation with them during the group discussions, and they actually told me that in fact they have low proficiency in the English language, and actually one strategy that I used in class was I was translanguaging. So I would mix with especially with Fusha. And also, I used to provide them with a glossary. I was teaching a course in legal English, so I provided a glossary basically for English and Arabic terminology. So it's something that I was aware of because I knew if I use a monolingual, let's say, approach in the classroom, then basically I would be losing my students. Okay, so what's the point of speaking in English when students actually don't understand what you're saying? So the point of education is that actually you want students to get the content and little matters which language you are using. So again, of course, I would recommend using translanguage pedagogy in the classroom because again, it's beneficial for students, and at the end of the day, you are only going to reach your objectives if students understand your message and if your message is well received.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Bilhiyah. Before moving to the next question, just an announcement to be made. There will be like an international conference after this series of webinars. So you just stay tuned or follow Dr. Mohammed Gamgami on social media to get the necessary information about the international conference that will be taking place soon. So moving to the next question, we have Yusra. She is saying, thank you, Professor. It was really insightful. I would like to ask how you see the role of EMI evolving in Moroccan higher education, particularly in balancing the needs for global competitiveness with the preservation and promotion of local languages and cultures.
Okay, I think that's a very pertinent question. I think EMI, I would say, is gaining more and more popularity. And 30 years ago, I think Al Akhawan University was the only university, and it was just to start in 1995 that started offering instruction through English medium. But of course, 30 years forward, you see that more and more universities. So besides Al Akhawan, there is HUM in Rabat, Université Internationale de Rabat, Université Internationale de Casablanca. Okay, we have SIST Sunderland, which is a UK university. Okay, and also there is an American university in Tangier. It has a campus, New England University. So this is gaining more and more popularity. And also, even in public schools now, because of this pressure to publish through the English medium, and also to help with university ranking, because one important dimension in global university ranking is actually publications. So unless you publish in prestigious journals, I mean, the ranking of university will not go up. But of course, if we compare our universities to just universities, for example, in the Middle East, like UAE or Saudi Arabia, I mean, they're really highly ranked. And I think one of the main reasons is because they publish through the English media. So I think this is spreading. But again, as I've said, I mean, we need a clear policy that tries to balance, let's say, the need for foreign languages, for economic and sometimes political reasons, like English and French, and also the need to preserve local languages. And I think one way of doing this is actually to use translanguage in pedagogy, where actually it's okay to use local languages in the classroom. Okay, there is nothing wrong with that. Okay, it's not like if I am in an English classroom, I have to use English exclusively, or if I am in a French classroom, I should only use French. But again, this needs to change the mindset, because for me, for example, when I was in school, and I was talking with some teachers as well, it's still the case today. English teachers are banned from using any other language in their classes even today. And this is what their, let's say, inspectors tell them. So I think it should be okay. It should be the rule, or the rule rather than the exception, to use other languages in the classroom. We should celebrate. This is one way to celebrate culture and linguistic diversity.
Of course. Okay. We have lots of questions. Moving to Yassine. He's saying, he's thanking you first, and then he's asking about the difference between content and language integrated learning and English medium instruction. Is there any difference between the two that you can highlight?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of overlap. So we say content integrated language learning. It could apply to any language. Okay, so basically, for example, let's say if I have students from, let's say, the UK who come to Morocco and they want to study, let's say, Arabic, so I could offer them English courses. Sorry, I could offer them courses, let's say, in Marija and also in standard Arabic. But at the same time, I could offer them a content course about, let's say, Moroccan culture or Amazigh culture, for example. Okay, so they can study it. And of course, the assumption is by teaching them a course on Moroccan culture in Arabic, they're also going to improve their proficiency, especially in standard Arabic. And now, of course, EMI, it's a type of content language integrated, let's say, curriculum, because it uses English to teach the subject matter or to teach the content. So it's pretty much the same. Except that EMI is more specific and content integrated language learning. It's broader, it applies to any language.
Clear. Good. So moving to the next question by Lubna, she's stating that I understand that EMI plays an important role in preparing students for global job markets. Would it have the same importance for the local market? And if not, how can we guarantee a balance?
I think that's a very good question because I'm sure you know about this, Ahlam and Mohammed. I mean, in our faculties now, and it's all the case in Morocco, most of the new students, they want to study English. Okay, so nobody wants to study French. Very few students go for Arabic. And actually, they're not even interested in other majors like, let's say, philosophy or anthropology or sociology. So everybody wants to study English. And for example, in our university, we no longer accept all students. Okay, so we have a certain number, about 800 students, and basically we only accept students who have let's say a score of 15 out of 20 in the English exam, the national exam. And of course, if they get a score below 15, then they are directed to another major. But of course, the problem is that when these students graduate, the question is, what are they going to do? What are they going to do with English in the local market? Actually, Arabic and French are still very, very important. So if you only know English, that's not enough. And a lot of these students, they have poor mastery of French. So actually, French is still an important language in the Moroccan job market. So going now back to EMI, I would say it's the same thing. So it's very important, I would say, globally, because again, if you're thinking about maybe going to a country like China or Japan or maybe Germany, I think mastering English will serve you better than using French. But again, I would say if you are in Morocco, you do need to know, you do need a good mastery of French, Arabic, and also English.
Sure. Hannah is asking a very interesting question. Actually, she's saying, do you think that EMI complicates things for students with learning disability, especially dyslexia? Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, I think it does because, again, if you are dyslexic, I mean, anytime you have to deal with the new language, it's an added burden. Okay, so this is why I have mentioned in the presentation that actually we do need resources. So right now we have, let's say, severe gaps in resources. And not only do we need language centers, but also we need centers to help students with learning disabilities. Okay, and of course, we need counselors. And of course, when I talk about counselors, we're talking about college counselors who can help students with all types of, let's say, challenges that they face in school. Be they, for example, exam, be they linguistic problems, be they mental problems, physical problems, and so on. So of course, it does complicate it. And before implementing an EMI curriculum, we do need to provide enough resources and adequate infrastructure to make sure it will be effective and successful.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bilhiyah. Moving to the last question we have today. So moving to Mohammed Al-Haddoushi is asking the following. Are there any observable trends in Morocco where industries traditionally dominated by French are now favoring English-speaking professionals? Has any empirical research been conducted on this matter, or is it just a general judgment?
Yeah, I would say there is a trend, but I don't know about any research. But basically, I mean, based on my informal conversations with students and also administrators at Al Hawani University, a lot of these students, they work in big companies like Dell and IBM and Procter and Gamble, because they said all these companies actually, they want graduates from our universities because they know they master English and they studied business and computer science through the English medium. Okay, so again, there is a trend, and as I've mentioned also in my presentation, I think it's important to speak English besides French. Okay, so in other words, if you apply for a job in these companies, okay, well, French maybe is good for the local market, but actually these are multinational corporates, and a lot of their customers are actually overseas. So you do need to deal with customers through the English medium. So this is why these companies prefer people who graduate from universities that offer instruction through the English medium.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan Belhiyah. Very insightful, very informative. Thank you for all the knowledge and information you shared with us. I believe that the audience or the attendees have learned much from you. I believe we have no more questions. Thank you, Mohammed Gimgami. Any concluding words before we call it a day?
Thank you, Ahlam, and thanks to the audience, and thank Mr. Belhiyah for the wonderful presentation. And I have all the emails. If there is an update, I'll share via emails for the upcoming conference, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan Belhiyah. It was really nice seeing you again. Hopefully we'll meet in other future, I don't know, virtual maybe, or in-person conferences or webinars. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mohammed, for the invitation. Thank you, everyone. Have a very good evening.
Thank you all. Have a good one.